let me just ask a follow-up on that, because the person mentioned HIPAA. How would do investigations, and you're both former law enforcement, do investigations into drugs start with the arrest, or do a lot of times is there prep work up to it? Again, and I think what the person was going for is if law enforcement is going to investigate it and spend a couple days investigating, is there any way early in the investigation that they've got a report from, say, a neighbor that somebody's grown pot, and a law enforcement official spends several days investigating it only to find out then later that there's a card and it was legal? Is there any way to circumvent that so tax dollars aren't wasted that way? Or under HIPAA, is that going to be something, and the health privacy, is that going to be something that isn't possible? Sure.
The drug investigations are supposed to be based on good information, sometimes through the use of confidential informants, usually people that they have something over their head that they want to make a plea bargain for, turn somebody else into us and all that. Actually, drug enforcement is one of the biggest things that causes black eyes for law enforcement because of our policy that creates the black market, creates a lot of mistakes in law enforcement, and makes law enforcement look bad. And you have somebody's 92-year-old grandmother getting shot to death by officers high on natural adrenaline kicking in her door, who end up admitting in court and being sent to prison that they had to assault, in other words, put drugs there because there were none, because their information from an informant was bad, and the investigation that led to the warrant was bad and iffy. But sometimes it does lead to real drug operations. But that's something that you have to go with on a case-by-case basis. Again, we refer to the fact, if you decide to do a drug raid on a house, which is usually how it's done with a no-knock warrant, regardless of the amount or what the drug is, you do it. And you hope that the drugs are there. If you find drugs, and there are only 6 plants, and there's only one usable amount, and the person has an ID card, you're done. They're legal. So you say, excuse us, we're sorry, I guess we have bad information. If it's a caregiver and he has 30 plants and 5 ounces, as they're allowed, of usable marijuana, then they're legal according to the statute. Anything more than that is against the statute, and you can do or file charges against them because they are outside the scope of the law. It's really still quite simple. As far as checking for a driver's license, I've been retired for 7.5 years, but it was probably 15 years into my career, I didn't have to call anybody to find out if they had a driver's license. I had a computer. It takes about 30 seconds to get a response on the computer to run a name check to see if they have a driver's license and whether or not it's valid. Same thing can be done easily with quick registration and computer access for these ID cards on the road. So it doesn't matter what time of day you do it.
Trevor?
Well, that would work well for South Dakota, but I don't know if Montana is going to give me access to their system. I don't know if California is giving me access to their system. You know, it's again, I go back to quite a lot of hoops to jump through for 2% of the population. Where medicine, the doctor would say there's better alternatives out there. And as you look in other states, they have so many manpower issues from the law enforcement that adding on, well, I'll just knock on your door and hope that you got 15 plants in there as opposed to your prescribed number of 6 plants. That's a waste of resource to knock on somebody's door and then to say, I'm sorry. We want to make sure when we go through there that it's there. And right now, we cannot do that. I cannot verify ahead of time if you should only have 6 plants or 1 ounce or whatever the case may be, because I can't access the system until after I confront him. And then he tells me, hey, I'm a card holder, I'm good to go. And you say, oh, I'm sorry, I guess I just wasted my day and your day. Now, if that's where the taxpayer wants their money to go to, waste the resources, I mean, that's what we're going to vote on Tuesday.
Questions come, and it's over. I won't scold anyone for clapping, okay? Just since I sounded really frightening to begin with. I know I intimidate y'all. The one question that kind of gets to the heart of it, coming from both sides. Basically, we have two different questions. One says, you can't ask anybody else to bear your pain. How can you deny relief? The other question is, how come the signs don't just say this is about medical marijuana instead of saying state access or compassion is the key? Isn't that being somewhat misleading? So kind of, I guess, to the heart of what's going on behind no and yes, and the compassion issue and pain issue. Trevor's turn to go first.
I guess statistically, you can see whether you go to Colorado or whether you go to California or whether you go to Montana, statistically, 90% of the people are getting medical marijuana for pain, which we all have. And it's not about terminal illness. If it were, they would have written the initiative so it'll only cover the debilitating diseases that people keep throwing out. If it were truly about terminal illness, they should have crafted the initiative that way. Instead, they opened up the door of chronic and intractable pain, and that's where I think many folks lose their compassion when they hear about people with skateboarding injuries, with the average age of 41 years of age, people with back pain. I had a video where two individuals were 19 years old. They went in to the head shop. They have cards. One kid couldn't focus, and one had trouble sleeping. Now, was that what the population of South Dakota, Montana, California thought that the initiative was all about? No, they thought it was about really, really, really sick people, not people that got injured on a skateboard. And 90% of the people, 20 of those 20,000 card holders, those are the people that are gaming the system. And they're gaming the system and taking advantage of the people that truly need help. And I always say it's good to have compassion for the dying, but also have compassion for the living too, because you have more impaired drivers out there that cause more accidents, to kill more people.
Well, again, we don't have any proof yet of what is impairment. It would be nice if we could get this to Schedule 2 so they can find out. And then we maybe could have a measure. As far as using safe access is about patients who, when they meet with their doctor, come to an agreement based on their medical history and what the doctor has seen does or doesn't work for them, gives them another tool or another medication that they can use, that they can access safely by recommendation of a doctor, as it's required in medical marijuana states because the government won't budge on it. So that's what we call by safe access. They don't have to go out and find a drug dealer who wants to sell them something else besides marijuana to get this. They have a right through this law to have it recommended by their doctor, then they can grow it themselves or have it provided by a caretaker. As far as compassion means that we're just looking at it as for those that really are ill, even though there may be abuses, as there are with all legal prescription drugs. Example right here in Sioux Falls, the kids holding a swap meet in the restroom of the high school the other day with their parents' OxyContin and so forth. It happens. It's human nature. People do that. It's not a reason to deny someone who really just wants to do the use of another medicine, another tool in their tool chest to fight their disease. Abuses are easily dealt with. They're either within this law or they're not. If they're outside this law, they're still subject to arrest just the same as anyone who has nothing. There's not, for any reason, allowed to have marijuana under the current federal statutes.
Medicines, the time when you wake up in the morning, you might take your Aleve, your Advil, your Excedrin. You know that it's safe to take. You know that it was manufactured in a factory in the East Coast where state regulators, federal regulators authorized for them to produce that and put it on your store shelf. You're okay. You know when you take that in the morning, you're not going to die from it. Well, if I manufacture that Excedrin or Advil in my basement, would you take it? Because that's what this medicine is. They're manufacturing their so-called medicine, the marijuana, in the basement. You don't know what kind of pesticides are sprayed on there or fertilizers that are used. There's things called spider mites that invade the medical marijuana plant. And you're trusting the guy that wants $350 an ounce from you for your medicine. That's not medicine. Medicine is regulated. If I smoke a Marlboro cigarette, I know the tobacco farmer, he can document what he sprayed on there because the FDA, the the Department of Agriculture, they demand it. But the person growing marijuana in his basement, 21 years of age, he doesn't have to show that either. Doesn't have to show how the marijuana is produced, nothing. As the card holder, wouldn't you want to know that? But it's not an initiative. There's no regulations on how the medicine is produced, as opposed to every other medicine out there, whether it's OxyContin or whether it's Advil. There's regulations on how it's produced. This medicine, so-called medicine, has no regulations. 21 years old, that's all you gotta be, no felony conviction. You can make medicine. That's it. That's all you need. You're good to go. Make it in your basement.
Yes, first of all, I'd like to ask anybody if they've ever had a neighbor or maybe a farmer down the road or something, offer them a free batch of corn or homegrown tomatoes. You stop and ask them what fertilizer they used or what insecticide they used, or do you just take it home, wash it off, and eat it, or cook it and then eat it. Cooking will kill most of that stuff anyway. Secondly, the Department of Health has given a lot of leeway in establishing various additional regulations in regard to this law, and if they decide that that's necessary, I'm sure they can say that there are certain ways you need to grow your marijuana to ensure that it's good, clean medicine and not just something grown out in the dirt somewhere. That would be up to them. They know more about that than most of us do, and I'm sure that if they find that necessary, they can pass that regulation that's allowed in this law.
Two questions that kind of follow up, that we'll lead it, we'll go with them one at a time, but kind of go along that line that you were just, both of you were talking about. There is a person who would like to know, would you be in favor of it if it was just available through a pharmacist at a pharmacy rather than under the statute from a caregiver, and that goes to both gentlemen. Tony, you can go ahead and go first.
I've already stated that in my book, the ideal situation would be that the government get off the dime, move marijuana to Schedule II, and then it can be prescribed by doctors, and it can be thoroughly investigated to determine just exactly how many other things it's actually good for, and what things under long-term use it might not be good for. And maybe it might even someday, I doubt it, but someday be forbidden, like several FDA-approved drugs that have been found to kill people are ultimately forgiven. But as long as we don't allow that investigation, we're stuck with trying to do what we can do now. So far, no one has died directly from the use of marijuana, as whether or not they end up killing somebody else. That's at this moment, pie in the sky. There's no proof to show that that's actual cause and effect. But until then, this is what we have to do state by state until maybe the government gets the idea there are enough people out there that believe the recent studies in the last 10 or 12 years that show that there's a lot of medical efficacy for marijuana, that they'll get off the dime and decide to put it on Schedule II, where it can become, quote, real medicine, and maybe end up in pharmacies where pharmacists can make all kinds of money. That they make now, as far as $3.50 an ounce, that's a black market rate, I guess. I don't know how to buy marijuana. But seeing as how that they're prohibited from actually making profit in this law, I don't think they're going to charge $3.50 an ounce. The caregiver's not going to charge a patient $3.50 an ounce. It may well be a relative who just wants to help their sick relative.
Sure.
Well, I guess if it was in a pharmacy, actually had a prescription and actually had a regulated dose, like the number of pills, the number of milligrams, then it'd be a medicine. Then it would have been approved by the FDA. It made its way to the pharmacy county. The doctor would be able to regulate, determine how much you've taken. That's a medicine. This is not a medicine. There's no pharmacy involved. The doctor's involved for a moment of time. I have an article back there where an 8-minute interview, a guy got his card in Montana. 8 minutes it took him to get his card. I have a friend who went undercover in Montana, made up an ailment as he was standing in the line at the doctor's office. The doctor didn't even look at him. Filled out the form, gave him a certificate, off he went to get his medical marijuana card. So it's easy to fake. They have doctors in Montana, they fly in from California, open up a hotel room, and it's a revolving door of people that want their medical marijuana card. There's no physical examination, nothing. The doctor just wants his $150, and the person just wants his medical marijuana card. It doesn't matter. They're not terminally ill, they're not cancer-ridden. They just want their card to get high. And that's why those numbers spring up so much from 2008 to today's numbers that you see today. Doctors in South Dakota work the same way. The doctor only has to be licensed in South Dakota. You don't have to live here. And he can open up shop and he can dole out the medical certificates all he wants as long as you get your $150. He doesn't care if you're really sick or really have chronic pain. He just wants his $150. You saw from the slide there were 10,000 to 12,000 cards issued, but only about 200 doctors are issuing cards. If it's such a great medicine, you would think more doctors would be issuing it, but it's only 200 doctors.